Well, hello everyone, and welcome to Cup of TV. It is Cookie here for our Valentine's Day special show. We welcome you all in, and I can't wait to be welcoming in Isiah McKimmie as well, our relationship expert here at Cuppa.tv. You're not going to be disappointed. And I suppose as I sit here today and I ask you this question, what do you want your relationship with your other special half to be like? Have you thought about how your relationship is going at the moment? What could you be doing better? And how can you grow better together as well? So it's great to see some people back in the chat room. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Cuppa. It is Cookie here, and our show is called Pick My Brain, and this is where we get to go in depth with some of our subject matter experts on important topic areas like this one today. Before I kick it off, I just want to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and recognise their continuing connections to lands, water and community. I do pay my respects to the elders, both past and present, and always acknowledge the First Nations wisdom and storytelling around relationships themselves, around how we can be better servants of this community that we live in, that we call Australia, and the people around us. So today's guest is one of Australia's leading voices in relationships and intimacy with over 15 years of experience. Her name is Isiah McKimmie. She brings warmth and clarity and practical insights to conversations many of us are craving but are definitely not having. As someone who's gone through their own relationship challenges, I wish I knew Isiah before my moments. And together we can redefine what a healthy romantic relationship actually looks like beyond the highlights reel that we might all see on social media. So let's bring in Isiah right now. Isiah, welcome to Cuppa. How are you, my friend?
Cookie, I am well. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, I'm so glad that you're here. I'm so glad that you're part of our beautiful community of experts that can support individuals, but also many organizations navigate some very big topic areas. And there's nothing more impactful than the relationships that we have. It carries through every way, shape or form into how we feel, how we show up in everyday life. If our relationships aren't steady, especially those ones that we're intimate with, it can really unpack a lot of different things. And I'd love for you to share a little bit about your story and why you're so passionate about supporting people navigate what is one of the most important things that you have to navigate in life.
Yeah, firstly, you are right. The quality of our relationships determines the quality of our lives. And most of us were not taught how to do this well. And we've got really good research and data showing that our ability to form close, healthy, harmonious relationships literally impacts every single measurable area of our health and well-being. It impacts our immune system, it impacts mental health, rates of anxiety and depression. It also impacts our life expectancy. So there's really good reasons for us to learn the skills and practice the skills that help our relationships thrive. I ended up doing this by complete accident. If you had have told me in school that this was an option, I wouldn't have even suspected that I could end up being here. But life has a way of taking us to the places that are often unexpected, but sometimes really meaningful. So I grew up in the country. We didn't talk about sex. I didn't get a lot of sex education around it. I was embarrassed, I blushed, I turned red whenever I heard anyone mention sex. All of that started to change for me in my early 20s when I was at a music festival and kind of stumbled into a Tantra workshop. If anyone doesn't know what that is, I completely understand. I didn't know what it was either at the time. It is a form of yoga and a spiritual teaching that we tend to know in the West because we've cherry-picked parts out of it that help us have really incredible sex and also more fulfilling intimate relationships. That was a really huge turning point for me in my life. I love Tantra. It helped me become more comfortable with my body, removed some of the shame that I had around sex, some of the anxiety I had around sex, and helped me have an intimacy that I didn't know was possible. One thing led to another, and I ended up teaching Tantra. Not long after that, a psychologist saw me teach and asked me to teach the practical things that I knew from Tantra to his male clients who were experiencing sexual dysfunction. And that was a profound part of my life where in these young men who were experiencing challenges with intimacy and relationships, I really got to see how much sex and intimacy can impact our entire life, our confidence, our mental health, how we show up in the world, in our work. And I was sold. I wanted to learn more about how I could help people with this. So I went on, I did a couple of masters and a postgraduate diploma. I went over to study in San Francisco. I became a lecturer here and essentially found myself as both a couples therapist and a sex therapist, helping individuals and couples with this incredibly important part of their lives.
It's so incredibly important, and now you're on TV and you're making, commentary on there, and we will unpack a lot today. And I just want to encourage everyone, if you do see the chat room open today, wherever you're watching us from, across all the different devices, or across all the different platforms, please just any nugget that comes today, put it in the chat room. Any questions you've got, put it in the chat room for later. I want to go back because I'm going to, I've always got to look at my own life and where maybe my struggles have been in intimate relationships. And, so I lost my dad when I was 4. So I didn't see firsthand what an intimate relationship was with my mum and my dad, not that I can remember anyway. And I suppose what I want to unpack now is what are some, I know that's a block for me because I never saw it, and I've had to learn it in many different ways. And it was never an open conversation that I ever had with mum as well about all of this. So that is one block. But what are some other blocks that you see from people around why they can't express who they are when it comes to intimacy and more sexual-based relationships?
Firstly, I think your story resonates, Cookie, because for so many different reasons, so many of us didn't see these healthy relationships modeled. They didn't get the skills and they didn't get the support to be able to talk about sensitive, challenging issues in relationships. And as much as we might grow in our lives and as much as we might do the work later, that stays with us and it has an impact. And I love your awareness around that as well. We are so shaped by our early relationships, and there's research that shows we are being shaped by relationships around us when we're still in the womb. Conflict between parents in the final trimester of pregnancy impacts the vagal tone of the baby after birth. Our vagal tone is connected to our ability to regulate emotions, process emotions, which of course is a fundamental part of how we show up in relationships. So even from before birth, and certainly in those really early years, often before we are even aware of what's going on, we're being impacted by what we're learning. Whether that's that we have to survive on our own and process things internally, and that's how we learn to survive, or whether we're more outward processors and we're constantly talking through things and trying to connect with the other person. So there are patterns that we refer to in psychology and therapy as attachment styles that shape the way we form relationships for the rest of our lives. And if you add into that, there are skills around connection, communication, and also sexual intimacy that most of us just weren't taught. So we're doing what we learned in childhood, we're doing what we saw or didn't see around us, and then we're taking that to someone else who's learned their own patterns that might not be the most effective or healthiest patterns either. So we often have two people with some conflicting skills and ways of being in relationship here. And we're expected to just be able to do it. The media kind of tells us this myth that once we find the right person, it'll all be easy. We'll live happily ever after. And relationships take so much work. They do take learning skills, and they take some self-awareness as well. That again, these are skills that most of us weren't taught, but that we can learn at some point in our lives.
Yeah, and I also think, as you navigate your relationship and as you're in a relationship for a long period of time, and again, this happened with me, you go through waves. Like there are things that occur, whether it's kids, whether it's external pressures like finance, whether it's a whole bunch of different things that can kill intimacy. And it's very hard to navigate. It is extremely hard to navigate when you're being pulled from pillar to post. So I would like to ask you a question around what does a truly healthy romantic relationship look like for you? Like, what does it mean?
Look, I think what exactly it looks like is going to look slightly different for everyone. That being said, we've got really solid research and data that shows us what is common in relationships that are happy and successful and last, and what would predict ultimately separation or an unhappy relationship. And there are variations in this of what works for individuals. Some people are very conflict adverse and have no conflict in their relationship and are still happy.
I'll put up my hand on that one.
Right. And sometimes that can be a healthy relationship. And sometimes that means there are things going on under the surface that aren't being dealt with. For other couples, there will be arguments, but it's the way they talk through those arguments that makes a difference to the longevity of that relationship. So we know that there are certain things, certain communication styles that erode a relationship. They erode trust in a relationship, and they also have a direct link to the immune system of the partners involved in that relationship when they're used as well.
Can you unpack one common myth about intimacy you wish we could all unlearn?
About emotional intimacy or sexual intimacy?
Let's do both.
Do you know what? I actually think it's similar, and I think this goes back to what I said earlier. I think one of the most common myths is that this is natural and we should just be able to do it. And again, for relationships, it's because it's what we see, and we think, well, like I should just know what to do, or I'm doing better than what I saw around me, or I'm doing better than, the other couple that we know. And so we think that we don't need more tools and skills around this. And I also hear this a lot for sexual intimacy. There's a really high percentage of couples that will struggle with sexual intimacy, whether that's sexual challenges or a mismatched desire at some point in their relationship. And it has an impact on everything. It has flow-on effects to the connection between them, the self-confidence of everyone involved. And often people are reluctant to reach out and get support around it because it's another one of those things that they feel like they should just be able to figure out alone. I sometimes describe this as like running. We can all run. Most of us can go out there and run, obviously, unless there's something physical getting in the way. I mean, it doesn't mean we'll be good at it, and it doesn't mean that we'll necessarily enjoy it, and it doesn't mean that we'll be able to do it without injury. So by getting support, by learning ways to do it better, by learning things like technique, by getting a coach, by educating ourselves on this, sometimes by getting equipment to support us, we can actually run in ways that are more fulfilling and satisfying. And I think of sex in the same way. Most of us will just be able to do it, but it doesn't mean that it's going to be enjoyable. And if we learn more tools and skills, get the right education around it, it can be a really satisfying, meaningful part of an intimate relationship.
How important is emotional safety in all of this, in relationships? And why does that matter for, to be really able to strengthen our intimacy as well?
For ongoing romantic relationships, emotional safety is absolutely the key to this. And when we're working with couples who are experiencing disconnection or arguments in couples therapy, what we're really doing through all of the tools that we're sharing with them is helping them rebuild and sustain emotional safety between them. Knowing that our partner is there for us, that we can turn to them, that they'll be able to hold our emotion, support us, is really the key to long and healthy intimate relationships.
And boundaries as well. Like, can you share any sort of what healthy boundaries actually look like in real conversations?
Boundaries is a really interesting one, and it's really, really we can go we can get really nuanced around this. The way that I like to talk about communication, whether that's boundaries, saying what we don't want, or asking for our needs to be met, is in terms of people either being openers or closers in how they communicate with each other. Openers are people who have emotions and their needs more on the surface, and they'll very readily often share those. They'll sometimes become more elevated in conflict around this, and they'll want to talk something through like now and immediately and completely. And if they're in a relationship with someone who's a closer, that is going to be really challenging, because a closer will want to process internally first. They don't want to start more conflict. They don't want to say the wrong thing. And so they'll often retreat or shut down or go quiet as a way of trying to preserve the relationship. Now, that's hugely distressing to someone who's an opener. So we often end up with these cycles of someone opening everything up, the other person shutting down, and the person who's trying to share and be heard often trying to share more and becoming more distressed. So you have two people in distress and disconnection. There are really kind of clear strategies that we have for being able to share what's bothering us, what we want, what we'd like our partner to do differently in ways that don't do damage to the relationship. These are shared throughout nonviolent communication, the various gold standards of couples therapy, and in different communication improvement techniques. I break that down into a number of different steps that I share with couples in therapy. And I call it the communication harmony method. It fits into a bigger relationship harmony method that I share. There's a way that we can share and we can open up about what's going on for us that really talks about ourselves. I'm seeing this, I'm experiencing this, this is what my needs are. That isn't criticizing the other person, that isn't demanding anything of them, that opens up a discussion. And what that often leads to is the other person being more willing to hear and understand what's going on and be really interested in what's being said. So at that point, there's more harmony and a flow of communication between a couple where there's actually understanding that's built and empathy. So in that, boundaries can be shared and set, but it's really about sharing what the underlying needs are under that in a way where you are giving yourself the best chance of being heard.
I love that, and that just answered my next question about how do we really support each other when maybe needs and desires are mismatched, and I think you really answered that really well there. We had a question pop up for Erin, like, how do you break the I don't feel emotionally connected to you, so I don't want to have sex, and we're not having sex, so I don't feel emotionally connected to you, Luke?
Yeah, really common. So this is a really common pursuer withdrawal cycle. We have one person who will tend to pursue to get their connection needs met sexually, and the other will withdraw, and one person who will pursue emotionally, and the other one will withdraw. This is the most common thing that I work with couples on in therapy. And it often doesn't happen in one conversation, because there's often a depth of emotion here that that is hard to communicate and take some practice with. For the person who is saying, I'm not feeling emotionally connected, so I don't want to have sex, I would encourage that person to use that in I language, which is, around when I feel disconnected with you, I feel hurt and lonely, and in order for me to feel turn on, I need to feel connected to you. Can we talk about ways that we can build connection together so that we can then work together on intimacy? And also that for the person who is withdrawing emotionally because they're feeling hurt and rejected around sex, there is often a lot there to unpack and share with a partner. And I've seen really amazing things happen in therapy when a couple can really have that conversation together about the deeper emotions and needs of when their partner's withdrawing from them in various ways.
I really love that, and thanks for sharing that, Isiah, and hopefully, Erin, that supports you in answering that question. Some other sort of ways that we can incorporate some small daily actions to make the biggest impact on our long-term connection with our loved one and our partner. What would you recommend for people to start embracing every single day? So, because it is always a journey, it's not always going to turn on overnight.
Right.
How does that look?
Absolutely. So in the method that I share in couples therapy, there's 4 really important steps to this. And I always like to share this because I think it's really important for us to know that often we can try bits and pieces in isolation, but it really is about looking at the whole picture and making sure all of the areas of a relationship are covered. Otherwise, people often end up trying things. They go on date nights and they find that that's not working. They try to communicate in different ways and that doesn't work. And they're like, oh my God, nothing works. So there's 4 key areas that we need to look at. And these really work in a cycle with each other. The first one is clarity and vision. We want to understand where we're at right now and look forward positively to the future. And I love one of the questions that you opened with, Cookie, when I was backstage waiting is, what do you want for your relationship? We are often so focused when things aren't going well on what we're upset about, on what the problems are. And we end up constantly communicating those things. And it's like, that's all we can see. And in therapy, we call this negative sentiment override. The negative sentiment overrides everything. That's all we see. That's all we hear. And a really important first step is to think about, what do I want my relationship to look like? What are the positive things that I want out of this? And also to be sharing that with a partner more, so that you're a team and you know what you're moving towards together. The second step is to look at connection. And it's connection and friendship. This is doing the small daily things. It might be going on date night. It might be making sure you say goodbye to each other in the morning. It might be setting aside, and actually I recommend all of these things, having 20 minutes where you sit down and really have a conversation with each other. It probably should include sharing appreciation with each other, something else that gets lost. And things like having fun and playing together, which is really important for a couple's bonding as well. We know that the quality of a couple's connection directly impacts the quality of their communication and the likelihood that they'll end up in conflict or an argument when they start to have difficult conversations. So we need to make sure that we're connected, before we move into having those really difficult conversations. And for so many couples, they've had a busy day, they're both off at work, they're juggling kids, and one person's been desperate to say this thing that's on their mind. And so out it comes, but they're doing it without the foundation of connection, and things tend not to go well from there. And again, there are a lot of tools and skills that we can learn around having harmonious communication with a partner, even during conflict. Now, we also know that when a couple has strong connection and communication, they're much better able to deal with sexual intimacy together. So we want to work on that foundation and then look at the sexual component of a couple's relationship, because this is also an important way that couples can connect. There's a lot of bonding hormones that are released when this happens. For men in our culture, sex is a socially sanctioned way that they can seek connection and feel close to a partner, and they don't get to do that with anyone else, usually apart from their monogamous partner. So sex plays a role in this as well, and then can lead to more connection. And so again, we want to look at each of those 4 areas and make sure that we're dealing with the system, and that we're moving through and constantly moving through every area to have continual improvement. Relationships do take work and they take effort. It takes doing things daily, but we also want to make sure that we have the right tools in the right order so that it's effective and we get the results for our relationship that we're looking for.
Absolutely love that, Isiah. And if anything's resonating with you today, please pop it in the chat room, and don't be afraid to ask questions, because we've got this opportunity to open the floor and have a really good, honest conversation today around this very important topic area. Isiah, as our expectations, because of everything that we see through social media and all that, has it changed in what we think a good relationship or a great relationship is, in your perspective? Because you see the divorce rates. Are people just not open to just settle anymore? Like, how do you see the current world we're in?
Oh, this is a big one, Cookie. This is a big one.
Get on your soapbox if you want.
Look, I really come from quite a feminist perspective around this as well. And I think the reality is that while at certain times in the past we had lower divorce rates, we also didn't have the same kind of choice, and we had a lot of people and a lot of women, particularly in unhappy relationships, that didn't have the choice to leave. And of course, if you go back a little bit further in time, monogamy was also not the norm in certain situations. So there is a different context here. I do hear, and I think we especially hear this with dating apps. I think there's a lot of discourse around we're too easy to move on to the next thing now when we don't put the effort into the relationship we've had. I think there is some truth around that. Again, we expect it to be easy, whereas actually there's often tools and skills we need to learn. But again, one of the things that I see, and I'm coming from a feminist perspective on this, is that I think too often women are socialized to settle and to stay in relationships that they know are not right and are not meeting their needs. And what many of us actually need to do is learn to say no to the wrong relationship sooner, so that we actually open ourselves up to getting into a relationship with someone that can meet us.
I think that's such a critical part, because, I've been guilty of it as well, just staying in a relationship because I'm a people pleaser. And I didn't want to let the other person down, when I knew fundamentally in my gut, when I listen to my gut, I know it's always the truth, that I'd probably stuck in that relationship for too long and didn't do any of us any good in that moment. So I hear you on that. And I think if we can call those moments a little bit sooner, but we also hear that it's just so hard to find the perfect partner now as well. And like, for me, like, is the standards that we want too high sometimes?
Super tricky. It is super tricky. And there is a gender difference that we're seeing at the moment as well. And ultimately we can't escape this. We are seeing now really, really clear research that shows that men do better when they're in relationships. Women actually do better when they're single. Single, childless women are among the happiest cohort of people. Life expectancy goes up. For men who are not in a relationship, their life expectancy goes down. And there is an enormous shift in the last few years around what women are asking for and expecting and wanting in a relationship. And I know that there's been a lot of discussion around the 666. You know, women are wanting six figures, etc. And for a lot of the women that I'm talking to, because I fit that demographic where I have a lot of women, female friends who've opted out of relationships. They've been disappointed. They're no longer looking. They've found their own peace and happiness by themselves, and they're spending time investing in their friends, investing in their careers, and being happy around it. And I know that this is enormously challenging for a lot of men out there, heterosexual men in particular. We know, we hear a lot of discussion about the male loneliness epidemic and all of those things on social media that are telling young men what women want. I obviously can't speak for every woman and say that isn't what they're looking for. They're not looking for certain boxes to be ticked. But I also know a lot of women who are, looking for a man who's been to therapy, who's done the emotional work on himself. And if we, if I look at some of what's reflected in media around this, there was the show Nobody Wants This, where a rabbi started dating a 40-year-old woman. And I think one of the big appeals of that was that this was an emotionally attuned man. And that was enormously appealing. Heated Rivalry, which is huge at the moment, is showing romance without the misogyny. And women are absolutely flocking to it, even though it's depicting a relationship between two men. So I think this is a huge topic. I think we are changing what we're looking for. I am interesting as a couples therapist because I don't believe that everyone needs to be in relationship, and that's certainly what the evidence is showing us. But if it's understandable that many people still want that, and I'm really of the belief that if you are going to be in a relationship, make it the very best that it can be, and go out and learn those tools and skills for emotional intelligence, communication and connection, and also sexual intimacy that can make such a difference. Life is too short to be in an unhappy relationship, but it's possible to actually make them better and to help them thrive.
Thank you for sharing that, and it resonated a lot, especially for me. And since my wife and I separated, I've had to go deep and do a lot of work on myself. I had to own my shit. I had to own the trauma that has maybe held me back in relationships that I've never dealt with before. And that place of going deep on that in whatever way, shape or form I had to do that is only going to set me up right for the next relationship. And understanding more so, Isiah, that, I have to have stronger boundaries as well around me, because that was not something I held in relationships. I was always, and that didn't help, again, the relationships. But why was that the case? And where did that stem from? Where in my life did that trauma start impacting why am I people pleasing the way I am?
Yeah.
And it's such a great relief to go through that moment of discovery as well, because I feel more like me in who I can be for that next potential relationship that I'm in.
Yeah, I love this, Cookie. This is a revelation that I see men have a lot of, and everyone comes into therapy thinking it's their partner that needs to change. Everyone. And
it's their fault. They're not this. It's like bullshit. You have to look at your own shit. Sorry.
Right, that's right. And it's so incredible when I hear people, and often men, saying, "Oh my God, I realized the role that I had to play in this." And that people pleasing is such a common trait of a closer, of the
Yeah.
close drawing partner who's like, I don't want to fight with this person. I don't want to have an argument. And so even though I know that my needs are not being met here, I'm not going to share those because it might start conflict, and that's not what I want. And so you keep it in and you're pleasing, but of course your partner is never pleased because they know that something is going on as well. So learning, as you said, to know yourself and then have the tools to be able to communicate that in a way that can actually deepen intimacy and connection and not end up in an argument is so profound. I love that you've done the work, Cookie. I think you're such a great example for so many people out there.
We'll see how the next relationship goes, but you know, it's a self-awareness thing.
Huge.
It is one that I feel more confident going into the next relationship. I feel like I will know spiritually who this next person is, and I'll feel that versus my head thinking it. So, you know, and that's had to come with the work that I've done. Now, it is Valentine's Day coming up. When is it? This weekend, yes.
Yes.
Valentine's Day is coming up. What's the one conversation we should have with our, you know, loved one based off what you've learned, like what people have heard today? Like, what should we be? What's the right question to bring up in that moment?
Like, hey, our relationship is really important. It means a lot to me. I want it to be the best it can be. Let's look at what we can do to make sure it thrives year round, not just on these special days, not just when we end up in crisis. Like, can we look at what we're doing here on a regular basis to really strengthen this and have it thrive?
Love it. Last chance to put any questions in the chat room or any comments today. Okay, Isiah, what's vibing you at the moment, my friend? Like, what are you getting most excited about in your world?
Right, and yeah, I have to say there's two things here, Cookie. I came off the back of an incredible training last night with 90 therapists who showed up to learn how to have conversations about sex with their clients. This is something I'm really passionate about, educating therapists and healthcare practitioners on how to talk about sex. I have a podcast around this called Our Patients Are Having Sex, where I have conversations with different healthcare practitioners because these are important conversations across the board. I'm also incredibly excited at the moment to be launching Romantic Weekends Away. It's a new offering from my team and I. Thank you. That is it. It's funny how I
pre-planned this. Don't you say? What a nice segue. I feel like I should be on Channel 7 or Channel 9. What do you reckon?
Look, often couples don't need therapy, but they know they need something, or they want something that's going to help bring the spark back, reconnect them. One of the things that I have seen couples do is book a weekend away. And unfortunately, it often doesn't go well when they go away by themselves because it's the one time they get to talk about all the things that are under the surface and they end up arguing. There can be pressure around, are we going to be intimate this weekend because it's been a while and this is the only chance. And while they might have a good time, some of them, it means that they're not necessarily creating long-term changes in their relationship. So I've created these romantic weekends away as a way for couples to come away together. We've got so many fun activities and things that they can do that are going to build their connection. Again, we know that fun and playfulness are part of how couples bond, and that's often missing from their day-to-day life. There's lots of time for couples to relax together because our nervous systems also need to be relaxed in order to be in connection and in order to feel in the mood for intimacy as well. So we've got time for play, we've got time for relaxation, just having a really beautiful weekend away. But we've also got some sessions with myself in there where couples are going to get some of the really fun exercises that I teach couples in therapy. They'll get the practical tools that they can take home make a difference, and learn more of the things that we were talking about today. So things that they can implement going forward that really will help keep improving the health of their relationship. But again, they get to do it in a beautiful, relaxed, fun setting. So the first one of these is coming up on the Gold Coast at the end of March. We're really excited about this. And I think it's a really beautiful opportunity for couples, and a really great Valentine's Day gift to each other.
Let's see how I go in the next couple of weeks. Maybe I will find my perfect partner, and what a great way to start off that relationship.
It would be a fantastic way.
Could be a little hook. Anyway, no, that's my sales cookie arm coming out. No, I won't do that. That's not the way to start it, Cookie. Anyway, the other thing is that you are part of our beautiful community, and if anyone wants to prick Isiah's brain around any of the topic areas today, you can message Isiah directly. You can also find out a little bit more about information there as well, about everything that you do. In particular, even within workplaces right now, it's such an important conversation, because if your team aren't showing up, it might be because of the relationships that they have at home. And any final comments around that, Isiah, before we say goodbye today?
It is, we know that relationship well-being impacts how people are showing up at work. It is such a huge contributor to mental health issues. And there's a way that I can talk about this that is also really HR friendly for people who are worried about that. We really focus on the relationship components, and it's really an incredible gift to give to a team. Lots of great information when I'm giving talks around this.
Yeah, so many different angles to cover there that we can definitely help you with. So make sure you do check it out and pick Isiah's brain. Isiah, it's been absolutely incredible to have you on today. Thanks for going deep with me. I probably could chat to you a lot longer as well, but really do appreciate your time in holding space for this moment for everyone. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. And if you're watching this replay as well, please leave a comment wherever you are. And if you need any additional support, we can point you in the right direction as well. So any last parting comments for our audience today before you say goodbye?
Just thank you for having me, Cookie, and and remember that this is a skill that we can learn. It's just reaching out sometimes and taking that first step can make a difference.
So good, so good. Thank you so much, and thank you everyone for joining us today for another cuppa. We do have another show on Friday. We've got Ashley Conwell coming on. Ashley is a beautiful human who has gone through some massive things in her life. She lost her husband. She has triplets. We're going to be talking about the topic area of grief and grief in general. Many of us grieve in many different ways, and Ashley is now helping many other people, especially women, navigate grief in her programs and solutions that she's offering. It's on Friday. If you haven't logged on or registered for that one yet, please do so. It'll be on YouTube again, LinkedIn, but you can also go to our website, cuppa.tv, and find out more information about that show. That is it, everyone. Thank you so much for being a part of it today. Really do appreciate your time, and make sure you lean in for many other important conversations as we tackle the big topics here at Cuppa over the course of the next 12 months. We'll talk to you soon. See you later. Bye.